Hello, my name is Meshak, and Meshak Masibo, and I'm happy to have you join us in this conversation. So together with me in the studio, in a sense of that word, is Moses Waidanji. So we'll be having an interesting conversation about virtual assets based on the fact that there's a new Virtual Asset Service Provider Act that has been put in place, and now what that means, and just a longer deep dive into some of those topics. But first, I'd want Moses to do a bit of introduction of himself. I know he has done quite a lot over many, many years, I think decades specifically. So maybe you can just take us through maybe an introduction, your name in full, and then a bit about your background and experience, so that at least even the audience has an understanding of who's having the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Masibo, for having me. My name, as you said, is Moses Waidanji. If I start from reverse, I would say I'm a compliance specialist, but just to create a journey of how I got there, I won't sit here and say that is what I desired to be years ago. I'm actually more inclined towards the finance matters. I only deep dived into compliance, let's say 15 years ago, having worked in 3 banks. I started off with largely the top one, tier 1 banks in Kenya. While I was trying to run with the finance things, they didn't just work out. Though my academic and professional training is inclined towards that, I found myself running with compliance issues. This was actually the same time the compliance laws were being published or enacted in Kenya around 2009. And I have done compliance for the last 15, 16, going to 17 years now. And here we are. My experience spread across commercial banks and a Fintech. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. And I think part of why I'm also really happy with this conversation is because you have the blend of both traditional finance in terms of working in a banking sector, and as what you also see, you also have worked in a fintech that also works in a virtual asset, in terms of virtual assets. So you bring that, the beauty of blend in that context. So just even as we take a deeper dive, so what is informing a lot of this conversation is the fact that there's a Virtual Asset Service Provider Act that was is now in force, and it's been in force for a couple of months now, but it is yet to be operationalized because you're still waiting for some regulations from the Minister for the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, now through the Central Bank and the CM, the Capital Markets Authority. So you're in a sense having a conversation beforehand in terms to, in a sense, aid our audience to be able to prepare for that, what is coming, and now what are the best practices, how does that look like, and whatnot. So when you talk about virtual assets, the assumption, usually people start with defining what is a blockchain, then what is a Bitcoin, then what is USDT, but we'll assume a lot of knowledge on the end of the audience and just basically focus our conversation on what you're specialized in. Yeah. So I think as a first, even as we just think about this particular topic, for you can also just get your first impression, maybe your first experience with virtual assets beyond the traditional finance spectrum. So just your personal life experience. Have you ever used any? And it's okay if you haven't, but what was the first even professional experience of dealing with virtual assets? And how was that for you, particularly as a trad finance person? And yeah, so that can be a start to it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. And a couple of comments I'll put in there. First, and I think it's good we clear this for our audience, the act that is now a couple of months old, as you mentioned, if you look at the wording clearly, it's actually there to regulate and create a legal framework for the virtual asset service providers. It is not regulating the virtual assets. So we won't probably even start diving deep on the specific coins and stablecoins and all that, because that is not what the Act is regulating. It is there for the service providers. Going back to your question on my experience, when I was in the traditional finance setup, and probably you already know this, our biggest regulator in the financial sector issued a lot of I would say, warning notices to the supervised bodies and CBK, and it was a bit of a caution for not dealing or coming any close to anyone dealing with virtual assets. And most of us, especially some of us in the compliance, we took that as the Bible truth, and we never went anywhere near virtual assets or cryptocurrencies as it were. But over time, when we in that setup, there's a lot of interaction with the global partners, financing partners, the corresponding banks across, and you realize the world out there wasn't fighting them, but they were asking on how are you managing their risks. All right. So I came to slowly understand that it is not entirely the enemy. Virtual assets, it's not entirely the enemy. I think the enemy is not knowing how to manage the risks that come with them. I remember in a particular discussion with one of the global correspondent banks, they were saying, they were very upright, and they told us in a forthright manner, we cannot sit in that meeting and tell them that we are not servicing virtual assets providers. Probably what we do not know is that we have them, already indicating that we have them and we are not managing their risk. So I started changing my perspective about service providers in that space, and over time we could get a lot of requests, partnership requests, and again I took interest in like going through the literature and the narratives that they come, and then I started to realize that in my mind I started giving myself a challenge and asking, where did we begin as Kenya with, let's say, mobile money, M-Pesa, Airtel Money, Orange Money? It was more or less the same setup. People didn't believe this thing can work. People were very cautious of the risks that were attached to them. But here we are with, I think, 18 years now with M-Pesa. So even these virtual assets, they're moving in the same way, only that we are at the first step of the staircase, and we'll get there. So lastly, my personal interaction is when I was working in the Fintech, we were given the option, which is a very good thing, that actually a very good experience. We were given the option to receive our monthly salaries through the normal bank account or through a virtual asset wallet. And out of the curiosity to know how these things work, I jumped in and I chose to pick my salary through a wallet. And that's how I came to like practically and professionally experience how it works. So you get your pay, you move it to the fiat platforms as and when you need.
Amazing. I think also my experience of virtual asset, it's more or less similar. I also came from a viewpoint. My background is legal, so it's a very skeptical, critical viewpoint, because understanding, okay, it's anonymity. What are some of the things that you need to consider in that context? So I also had that bit of negative viewpoint, and my experience of it also was different, because I happened to also service some clients. So I serve clients from sometimes from other parts of the globe. So I had a client who once, I think, was doing some work for me. They're an Estonian client. They sent some money through to me, or to my firm, but it took, I think, around 5 days for them to process that whole entire payment. So that's my experience of traditional finance, and also gave me a bit of context into it. Then I think it's last year, recently, I also got a client, same likewise from a European country, tried to do the traditional bank settlement, but there was a bit of an issue, because I think there's a time Kenya got grey listed. Is it white grey listed or something?
Grey listed, yes.
So it means a lot of Swedish banks and banks from some of those countries really just don't send money to Kenya at all. So I was stuck. I couldn't receive a payment for work that we'd sign an agreement and all of those things. And then we got into the alternative of they asked if they can send the funds through USDT. So I have a rough understanding of it. I have a rough understanding of all of those concepts, but I hadn't really thought about it in a deeper lens. So once, but when they told me about that, of course, when it comes to payment, I figured it out. I figured out, okay, so this is what I need. I need here. I had a Binance, but created a Binance, then got another processor and all of those things, and eventually got the payment. And the payment, in between them agreeing to send me the funds and me giving them the wallet, it took around 10 minutes, 10 minutes or so for them to do a test transaction and whatnot. Something that previously took me 5 days and just a lot of work. Because ideally, even you see, when someone like sends you money from Europe, they can't send money here. It has to go to the US, some bank in the US, then some bank, and so it passes like I think 3 or so correspondent banks, yes, before it gets to you. So that's even my own experience, and I think also what makes me excited about virtual asset is just the potential, the fact that someone somewhere in Eastern Europe can send you money in 10 minutes and it's all done. So that's a bit of experience, and why I'm also happy to have this conversation and happy to on where we are. So, but maybe I can also go a bit into now what your background and your understanding of it. What should a company think about? A company that is entering this market from outside, or a company, even a local? Maybe now we can start with a larger company coming into the Kenyan context. They want to offer a virtual asset exchange or a virtual company or issue coins. From your perspective as a compliance specialist, what do you think are the key things they need to have in mind for them to get a license and operate properly? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. And I think I'll still draw lessons from my experiences in both setups, the traditional finance and the current space. Having engaged in both spaces, I probably will say that the requirements in the traditional finance, the compliance requirements in the traditional finance are more or less the same compliance requirements that are required in the virtual asset space in the broader perspective, right? The only difference comes into the nitty-gritties or the differences come in the nitty-gritties. What a virtual asset service provider may require to do, maybe to handle customers' KYC, may be different from what a traditional bank would do. A good example would be we are used to, for KYC purposes, know your customer purposes, we are used to collecting documentary evidence just to show that this is a national ID, this is a registration certificate and all that. When it comes to the other space, it's almost 100% electronic KYC, what we call eKYC. So at the top level, the requirement remains both parties must do KYC. How you do KYC is what matters, and that can go on and on for each and every requirement. Back to your specific questions of what a new entrant would expect. The good thing is that the Virtual Assets Service Providers Act, that is, we mentioned, it's pretty new, has outlined what needs to be done. And it has also made a lot of reference to the existing laws, compliance laws or AML laws of the land, the main one being the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. We popularly call it POCAMLA. What happens, or what the Act said, it designated each of these actors, the virtual asset service providers, to be a reporting institution. A reporting institution in the sense of, in the definition under POCAMLA, is anyone that has some specific obligations in respect to anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing, and counter-proliferation financing. So those obligations are outlined in POCAMLA. You may not find them directly in the VASP Act, but because of the cross-referencing of the legal framework, you'll find them there. So, and it's actually what I was alluding to earlier. They are the same obligations that the traditional setup was using. They're the same obligations that the VASPs will be using. So, and for licensing purposes, because how the VASP Act has sort of segregated the requirements, there are those pre-licensing requirement, there are post-licensing requirement, and requirement for the VASP to carry on some sort of continuous monitoring throughout their life. So for pre-licensing, if I start with the compliance requirement, you must show your regulator. Remember, under this space, there are two main regulators. You could be under Capital Markets Authority or Central Bank of Kenya, depending on the services or the nature of VASP that you come in as. So depending on your regulator, you'll find, and I think you also alluded to it, we are eagerly waiting for the regulations to come and guide like the nitty-gritties of what we need to do for licensing purposes. But at the broader level, you have to show your regulator the fact that you're ready. You have put measures in place. You have structures in place to fight financial crimes. When you talk of financial crimes, you're talking of money laundering, terrorism financing, proliferation financing. So even as you make the application, you need to document your structures. You need to document your governance and oversight organs that you have put in place to fight money laundering, terrorism financing, and proliferation financing. And I think that given the space we are in right now, we all know, you mentioned about grey listing, we are all striving to get out of that bad list. And these are some of the things that the regulators will be pretty key to make sure that we are not licensing you and then start chasing you. They have to get it right first time. So that is a key requirement. And of course, it's not the only requirement. It's on top of the other host of requirements that have been listed there. The persons running the VASP must go through fit and proper. There's a capital adequacy requirement to meet. There's a requirement to have 3 directors. There's a requirement to have an office in Kenya, and all that. But focusing on the AML side of things, yes, you have to convince your regulator at the application point that you are ready to safeguard customers' money, safeguard the financial systems that you're using, and protect like even the national systems from abuse by the criminals. And of course, the other two would follow. Post-licensing, you have to convince the regulator that you have maintained what you told them at licensing. And you have to keep giving maybe regular returns as and when they are asked.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think also, just to, in a sense, put a bit more meat in what you mentioned, also to echo and add, I think the fact that the documentation that is required, I think maybe from the experience I've also seen with other people are getting, rather other companies seeking licensing, like the payments licensing or the digital credit providers, is that regulators are very keen on some of those documentation. And I've seen a common error, particularly for startups, which we'll discuss a bit, is maybe someone just goes to ChatGPT, auto-generates something, and then uploads and says, this is what is our X and Y manual or policy and all that. So, but I've seen that actually the documents are usually the scrutiny is very detailed, and they evaluate every single word, every single content, and to make sure that this is actually in line with Kenyan law, and a lot of it actually needs to be prepared and also ascertained by experts like yourself that actually we've looked at this manual, this procedure, and it is now this is proper, and the systems are proper, and all of those things. So I think it's important to bring that out, that practically you need support to develop some of those documents, and you need someone with the necessary expertise to provide backing that your manuals and systems are up to standard. Because I know you had experiences on my end. I think I've discussed them with you, how you do a lot of documents, you send them, then CBK or whichever agency is relevant to that context just sends them back, and you have to again work on them. Yeah, so I think to make the processes easier and the timelines really good for the applicant, it's important to have a professional to have some of those documents looked into and properly developed. I think also just also as to touch on that, the bits of smaller players. So I know they may be larger players who may have a larger team, larger budget, and larger context. But what about maybe the smaller players who may not afford to pay someone like yourself to sit in their office as an AML officer? What options do they have? Can they outsource some of these services? Yeah, so maybe you can also take us through that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think when you talk of small players, it's cutting across, because again, if I make reference to the grey listing, one of the issues they picked is that the big players seem to have everything in place. They seem to have the right personnel, the right technology, the right system, governance structures, and all that. The board they have. When it comes to the other players downstream, the assessors made an indication that there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the top players and the ones downstream. But remember, everyone is supposed to meet the same compliance requirements. So that is that we have seen that affect many other players, not just in the virtual asset space. But as you're saying, compliance is a cost. There's a cost, and they won't avoid that. But then again, you can play around to manage the costs that are relevant to your nature and size of business. If you are running a VASP with maybe you're just starting up, you don't have even 10 or so staff members, you have 5 clients and stuff like that, you realize that the cost of putting up medium size compliance structures will be more than your size of business. Okay, that won't be tenable. So in such instances, you find such entities outsourcing some of these requirement. They may outsource, like, even the whole process of licensing, seeking license. They may outsource transactions monitoring. They may outsource people to give maybe KYC procedures for them. And there are so many solutions nowadays that assist in that. Some of them are publicly known, and I probably can just mention a few. If it's eKYC, I said in this space, documents are 0.01%, and electronic stuff is 99.001. thereabout. So you find companies like Smile ID, they just do like 99% of your electronic KYC. The big one we all know in this space is Chainalysis. Chainalysis do a lot of work when it comes to transactions monitoring, comes to screening transactions for you when moving between wallets and all that. But for small-time players, again, those big names and popular names may be prohibitive in terms of the costs. There are many other tools that can be adopted, and I think one thing I have to mention at this point, in the VASP space, they have to consider technology number 1, technology number 2, technology number 3. They will not be able to avoid that. So what I was coming to is, there are so many other tools. Some of them can even be inbuilt in-house. You can take advantage of Excel. If you have people who know Excel, they can do wonders with Excel. Small time tools that you can scale up as you grow. But due to the almost prohibitive costs, we have seen it, and not just locally, even globally. There's a lot of outsourcing to the specialists, people who are competent in these matters. And again, just to mention, and probably you know this, you're in the same area. Even when you come out here, don't just rush to anyone who waves the compliance flag. Make sure you have the right people doing the right work for you. You actually just mentioned that you have had regulators return applications because of poor work. Okay, so yeah, applicants or players in this sector must be very keen on whom they engage going forward.
Okay, fantastic. Also, maybe to that, I'd want to get your thoughts on where do you think, how do you think the agencies will start enforcing the procedures? How do you think there'll be harsh in enforcement? Should any company take the regulatory space seriously? Is there an advantage to taking it seriously? Basically, should you license, or should you just do it in a sense, in Swahili you say chini ya maji, so just without necessarily having the license? So is it important to get licensed? From your experience also in traditional finance, do you think regulators will try to enforce some of these requirements, and is it in the benefit of the company or whichever company or applicant to try and comply?
Absolutely. If you don't comply, if you don't follow the regulations, you just digging your grave. Very good examples are happening right now. What happened to our good bank, Imperial Bank? What happened to Dubai International Bank? What happened to Chase Bank? What happened to the fintech space, Flutterwave and Chipper? You saw those kind of public notices from the regulators. So there's no choice about it. There's no choice. You have to regulate. It's not. I don't even think it's a matter of there being an advantage of complying or not complying. If you don't comply, you won't be in the business pretty soon. Remember also when I was talking about part of the reasons why we were grey listed, because I think if you look at the literature, there are eight items. I mentioned one earlier. The other one was that the country is allowing VASPs to operate without being regulated. So the country or the nation or the organs, the national organs cannot again allow VASPs to continue operating unregulated, unlicensed and all that. Knowing very well it's part of the reason we're on that grey list. Yeah, everyone is working hard to get out of that grey list. So that is not an option. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Also, maybe what I can maybe discuss is also beyond it being a requirement and it being mandatory for you to also I think also there's an advantage. It comes a business advantage if you have a license. At least you can be able to post online and even reach your both digital and physical customers by saying we are a CBK approved operator to do this X, Y, and Z, or we are approved by the CMA to do X, Y, and Z. So at least I think also that gives it a bit more, gives what you're doing a bit more weight, and also builds trust in terms of your consumers. At least consumers know they're interacting with a licensed entity. Because there was something that I won't mention names, I think, because of libel laws and whatnot, but there's a bit of conversation that's been happening online about a certain fintech that it's transactional, it's a payment processor in a sense, but people in a sense put some money within the fintech, and after some time it's like they're not able to really withdraw the funds. So in that context, it's and people are at a loss because they're not able to say who owns this particular fintech. So it's quite difficult. So I think being licensed and in that licensed space also, in a sense, helps you to build trust with customers, and also people know that I'm dealing with a regulated entity, that I can trust them, that my money is safe, that the people who own it are known, and it's a clearer structure for people. So I think so there is it's a requirement, but also it has a business advantage. It's advantageous for you to get authorized and to get authorized quick. Yeah, so I think also I wanted just to touch a bit on that grey listing, what you mentioned about grey listing, and just generally to move the conversation from VASP and even fintechs. What do you think, since from what I've understood, the country is under pressure to get out of that list? So what are those practical things that we can expect maybe in the next year or so that we're likely to see in terms from the CBK, from the different regulators, just try and get us off that list that may be contextually relevant to maybe fintechs or VASPs?
A good question, because some of those things are already happening. The enactment of the Act itself was an output of those efforts. We've mentioned severally about the regulations. So we are expecting pretty soon the regulations, the VASP regulations to be out there. And the moment they're out there, you'll start seeing a lot of traction from the players in the space. that to me would be the main one that everyone is waiting, because while the act is out there, there's a bit of gray area of how to go ahead. That should be the main one when it comes to the VASP space. The others have been happening. There's a lot of trainings going on. You every so often you find, especially if you're keen to see, like some of us who are in that space, you'll see a lot of trainings happening to the right people, the right groups, the right audiences, and stuff like that. The other day, I actually think it's actually this week or last week, EU sponsored our own DCI to take them through blockchain analytics on how to trace and follow illicit funds through the blockchains and all that. So there's a lot of that happening, just to make sure that while we say we have an act in place, a regulation in place, it's also effective in the sense that we know how to use it. We have the right knowledge to apply it, especially if it's the law enforcement authorities that are, or even people in compliance that are trying to offer guidance and maybe trace and track funds. They are being equipped with the right technology. So you'll find a lot of that happening. There are so many other groups that have been offering that kind of knowledge transfer to people who are interested in getting to the space. From the broader perspective, I think much of it has happened. When you relate to grey listing action items, much of it has happened last year. This year, we had an amendment act last year that gives bodies like ISPAC, LSK, BCLB a lot of powers to enforce compliance for their members. So that actually happened mid this year. Probably there might be something else that may come up next year, but a lot of probably what you asked has happened in the past 1 or 2 years, and that is why you're seeing the traction now.
Yeah, amazing. So I think what I'd also want to touch on slightly, as you're also trying to wrap it up, I've seen the fact that virtual assets, unlike perhaps other currencies, virtual assets do not have, I says they don't have borders in a sense. Because I've been to Nigeria, lots of conversations around virtual assets. You can see Kenyan companies there trying to market their services. I've been to South Africa actually, I think earlier this year, and also more or less the same context. A lot of companies thinking about it in a cross-border lens. South African companies trying to get here, Kenyan companies trying to get there. So there's a lot of, I think, motion in that lens. So based on your experience, because I read a bit about your background and you worked with helping people comply across different, like, multiple jurisdictions, what do you think a company needs to know about just some top things about operating across different jurisdictions if you are a VASP? So if you are either originating from Kenya outside, or you are coming from outside into Kenya, what are some of the things someone should consider?
I'll try to respond to that in like 2 parts. One of the reasons the virtual assets are so how do I put it, are moving that fast is that their nature of the international or cross-border nature. They don't have those sort of limits. The other one is, of course, as your good example you gave, fast, very fast, and they're open to anyone. Okay, so those are some of the advantages that come with virtual assets and crypto and all that. But again, on the flip side, they become if not well controlled, they become the challenge again. Okay, you see that quickness of moving money, you could probably be moving illicit money quickly. Okay, you could be moving money to a jurisdiction that has no laws and regulations about VASP. Okay, so the point is, if you're operating in a particular jurisdiction that I probably assume there are laws and regulation about it, it's always good to know where you want to venture, because if there are no laws, be very sure that maybe you're just opening up yourself for abuse and stuff like that. So it's for practitioners or players in this space, they need to understand the legal frameworks for where they want to put up businesses. We are very lucky as Kenya, having just passed the legal framework the other day. That has sort of given a standard platform for the players to do their business in a probably secure way, open and transparent way. Previously, as you said, it was junior maji, which now exposes everyone. So players in this industry need to know where they want to fetch their business from. If you feel like your country of operation is originally or let's say Kenya, and you want to venture out to a country B that you're not very comfortable with, you could have mechanisms and controls in place just to say no wallets from those areas. For now, because of how I understand that jurisdiction to be high risk, I probably won't welcome wallets or transfers from wallets from those. So it's the whole thing of risk assessment. Conduct risk assessment to the jurisdictions you want to engage in.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. I think that's really really insightful. Maybe as we sort of wind up, you can get like your final word. I know the laws, the regulations, the law passed in, I think, October, November. So ideally, the agencies have around 6 months to set them up, and then now the ball starts rolling and everyone needs to start getting compliant, which is maybe, I think, around maybe February next year, if I'm doing the math correct. So what will be your final thoughts, maybe something to share with people? Maybe what is the one thing they need to really consider and really think through as the regulations are getting set? Maybe like 3 things that you'd say, now practically do these 3 things. You can leave this podcast with these 3 action items. What will they be?
Thank you. The Act itself, even before we go to the regulations, has given a lot of indicative requirements that for anyone interested in the space, they don't have to entirely wait for the regulations. There are so many requirements indicated there. So if you desire to go into that space and to get the license within the space given, start putting these things in place. You saw one of the requirements is get an office in Kenya. So I don't think you wait for the regulations to come to tell you to get an office in Kenya. Start doing some of those things. As I was alluding to earlier, you need to have documented your compliance, ML compliance structures. Don't wait for the regulations. Just start doing them now. Because the problem is, and I think you got it right, compliance is a competitive advantage. Once the pioneers of compliance or the pioneers of being licensed, customers will get a lot of confidence in you and comfort in you. Once you're able to waive that license and indicate you're now licensed to do ABCD, you'll end up with that competitive advantage. So start putting your house in order right now. Talk to the right people. Talk to the right people who can guide you in putting your house in order. By the time the regulations are coming and telling you now, bring your documents to this office or take these documents to the next office, you need to have those things in order. The problem will be, and it's an unfortunate thing to mention, we are known to be last-minute people. So you'll find everyone rushing for the little resources, the few consultants that are out there, or the few compliance resources out there. Everyone is rushing to them to get licensed before the deadline, and that's why you'll find things happening like you were mentioning earlier, applications being declined because they are ChatGPT, they are copy-paste from somewhere else instead of just planning in good time.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. So I think what I've gotten is now you plan ahead. Don't be a last-minute person. Then you can always reach out to different consultants, and we'll put contacts in the description section for someone who wants to reach out. But yeah, I think that's been really an amazing conversation, and I think it's really been insightful even to me. And I think also for me, my take-home and my action points will be the same. If you can get an office set up, get the office set up. If you can incorporate the company, incorporate the company. If you can start at least having conversations, you can start having some of those conversations with the different experts who can be able to help you launch your business here or grow it into this market. I think that would be it for our conversation. So my name is Meshak Masibo. I am a lawyer. A bit more about me will be in the description section, but it's been a wonderful experience. Yeah, thank you so much for.
Thank you very much.